You are watching Metal Girl Solid, one woman's journey through a series she knows nothing about. I am the titular Metal Girl, Courtney Colson, and this is Intel Files number 3, all about Snake's uniform. It may surprise you to know that Snake's uniform and equipment are highly accurate to the standard issue uniforms in the United States military during the Vietnam War. I am a bit of a military antiques collector. I go to military swap meets, and the Vietnam War and the Cold War are my areas of interest, which was no doubt inspired by Snake Eater, as well as my other favourite war movies, Apocalypse Now, Platoon, Full Metal Jacket. First of all, I should say that although Snake lost his right eye, me wearing this on my left is not a mistake. As I've mentioned in the podcast before, 3 years ago I was hit by a car, nearly died, and so I've got nerve damage on this side of my face, and I've got intermittent ptosis in that eye. So this is just my regular everyday eye patch. We will begin with the BDU, the Battle Dress Uniform. Snake wears a variety of uniforms throughout the game, of course, some of which are entirely fictitious. But the uniform Snake is most often seen wearing in promotional materials and merchandise is what I'm wearing now. This is known as the Tiger Stripe uniform, the iconic uniform of the Vietnam War. Most military nerds, including myself, are quite fond of it. It just looks cool. I don't know. It just is. The Tiger Stripe uniform was created in the early 1960s specifically to blend into the jungles of Vietnam. This makes sense because the tiger stripes evolved specifically to blend into jungle environments. Nature is the best designer. Well, mostly. As I mentioned in an earlier episode, the only problem with the tiger stripes is that they're bright orange. Most animals that a tiger encounters, however, have dichromatic vision. But humans and apes have trichromatic vision. We can easily distinguish green from orange. The tiger stripe uniform evolved from the lizard camouflage used by the French army from 1947 all the way up to the late 1980s. Initially developed for the First Indochina War and then primarily used in Africa. I was unable to retrieve any information on how this fabric was manufactured, but prior to modern screen printing and weaving techniques, creating camouflage patterns, especially tiger stripe or lizard, would have been quite labor-intensive if they were using traditional screen printing methods. The alternative is roller printing, which you are seeing on screen now. This is likely the method they used. So the Vietnamese adopted this pattern from the French, and then the Americans adopted from the Vietnamese. The fascinating thing to note is that tiger stripe is a bit of an anomaly. It was never an official uniform to the United States Army. Those who wore it made that choice themselves. Oftentimes they had to be custom made, as the uniforms worn by the ARVNs, Army of the Republic of Vietnam, were way too small. Quoting from the Imperial War Museum here, designed and at first manufactured in the Republic of Vietnam, the tiger stripe camouflage is believed to have been first worn by the Vietnamese Marine Corps from 1959, the style influenced by the French lizard pattern of the early 1950s. Adopted by individual US Special Forces acting in an advisory capacity during the earlier stage of the Vietnam conflict, the style was often used by other elite formations, including those of Australia and New Zealand, aka the Anzacs for short. In the mid-1960s, South Vietnam adopted the uniform as a distinctive feature of their own Ranger battalions. Several uniform garments of this style were made under contract in several countries such as Thailand, Okinawa, Taiwan, and Korea, made in both American and Vietnamese sizes. Because tiger stripe uniforms were manufactured by so many different sources, they don't have a standardized appearance. However, I've bought a uniform from Rothko and Tiger Stripe Productions, and they look identical. This one is the Rothko one, but why do I have two uniforms? It's an interesting story there, but yeah, I will warn you that Tiger Stripe Productions They took about 6 months to get my order to me, and even when I would email them just for some sort of confirmation or an estimation, no response until I tried to escalate it and get a refund through PayPal. Oh no, we're just a small company, and we'll get to you when we get to you. And it's like, okay, it's great customer service, so just keep that in mind. Anyway, by the time they had gotten the uniform to me, I'd just gone ahead and bought the Rothko one because I had a convention and some photo shoots and stuff I needed. So I'm not waiting. But this uniform was enormous. This was the extra small, but I had to take it in by a huge amount. Thankfully, collars don't need to be adjusted too much. But yeah, like I brought in the shoulders, I shortened the sleeves, I brought in the body about. I think I took about 20 centimeters in on both sides. So yeah, being an average 5'3" woman trying to buy military gear for oneself is a bit of a challenge. But, doesn't hurt to have a spare. The uniforms you buy now are nearly identical to the one Snake wears. The only differences are that Snake has the cigarette patch pocket on the sleeve on the left, and the shape of the breast pockets are square rather than slanted. I don't know why all the modern uniforms have this slanted pocket. But what Snake wears is more accurate to the uniforms of the time. Next is the undershirt, and this is a piece of pure fiction, but it is that one detail that elevates Snake's look from generic soldier to something out of science fiction. It resembles nothing in the real world. The closest thing it resembles is, of course, compression garments like this one, which would be very uncomfortable and impractical in a military uniform. And indeed, it is the most uncomfortable part of an otherwise very comfortable costume. It doesn't breathe very well at all, and it's the thing that really heats me up. The rest of the uniform, I'm quite comfortable in whatever temperature, but this, thankfully Venom Snake does away with this piece. However, there is the bionic arm to contend with. I'm not sure how hot that's going to be to wear. We will see. We're a long way from MGSV, so I don't have to worry just yet. Now, I can find no information on this garment. All we can determine is what is written on the suit itself. Around the elbow area it says direct action suit and a serial number. Not direct action lawsuit, which was all that came up when I googled it. However, if it functions on the same logic as the sneaking suit, we can presume it works to reduce the impact of bullets and provides pressure to compress a wound. Next is the knee sleeve. Similar to the undershirt, there is no information on the knee sleeve beyond the direct action suit text written on it. The boss wears an identical one. This is most visible in promotional material and the Pachinko version, and presumably the Delta version as well. Knee sleeves are worn by soldiers across numerous wars, though they do not appear to be standard issue. Knee pads are more common, and seem to be a standard issue item. All I could find was discussion from real soldiers talking about them. They explained that the purpose of the sleeve or pad is to protect the knee when kneeling and firing their weapon. You have far greater stability and you are less vulnerable in that position. Now onto the boots. Naked Snake and Venom Snake both wear jungle boots. However, they are not identical. And I have spent so much time trying to figure out what color Naked Snake's boots are. They seem pure black to me, and then in a lot of merchandise they seem all black, but then other times they've got that little bit of green in them. As far as I can tell, Venom Snake, Quiet, and Delta Snake all have the black jungle boots with a khaki green stripe on the upper half. Either way, all black, black with a green stripe, or half and half, that is black leather with green or khaki canvas. These are all real variants of jungle boots. The jungle boot is another iconic item from the Vietnam War. They were specifically designed for jungle warfare in climates too hot for full leather boots. You would see this kind of design later evolve into the desert combat boot. And I've worn both to work for years, so I can tell you what they're like. I'm a furniture seamstress, by the way, so I work in a factory. The jungle boots are really stiff, admittedly, and this may be due to how old they are. And I'm wearing genuine boots from the 1960s. It even came with this little pamphlet. It is said that some of them have a steel plate in the sole to protect the feet from traps. I don't think mine has that. It's splitting, the rubber is splitting at the bottom. You can see right through, so it's just rubber. There are little ventilation holes on the side that let heat out, but it also lets water in. There are these really wide gaps on the bottom between the cleats, if I may call them, just sort of like a soccer shoe, the cleats to gain traction on soft surfaces. However, unlike a soccer shoe, the gaps between these raised areas are just the right width to allow every little stone and twig you step on to have to dig them out with a knife later. Guess that's what this is for. I'm not a big fan of wearing shoes anyway, but as far as regular shoes go, they're alright. I can comfortably wear them all day at work. Though, if I'm standing or walking a lot, the hardness of the sole becomes very noticeable and my feet ache a little. I much prefer the modern combat boots. Now, the ones I own are just replicas, but I love them, and for good reason. As I mentioned, being hit by that car, I was wearing these when the car drove over my ankle and shattered the bones. The bones were sticking out. But look at this. Hardly any damage on this boot. It held my ankle in place long enough to get me to the emergency room. I'm amazed how little blood there was. I have to say, I will be a little sad to say goodbye to them when they fall apart, but honestly, it doesn't seem that's going to happen anytime soon. I wore these modern combat boots as I backpacked across Japan, and they gave me no issues, not even in the snow. And I will say, I can wear both boots in summer, no problem. I don't feel overheated. I guess that's those vents on the sides doing their job. And I'm not just reminiscing about these wonderful boots, there is a point here. I'm so glad I decided to incorporate these military pieces into the regular rotation in my wardrobe. This is what I do with most costumes. I tend to pick costumes that I can get some practical use out of, or at least some pieces. So all those big crazy Warhammer or World of Warcraft costumes, they're all well and good and look impressive, but what do you do with it once the convention's over? I've got this water bottle here, I can still use that, and I've still got, pockets and bags and things that I could use in daily life. By wearing real military pieces every day, I've gotten a real good sense of what it is to inhabit this costume. It's not just that I've read information on these items, although I have done that for this video. I can actually tangibly feel what it's like to wear them. I can feel the difference and the evolution of military boots over time, how the technology has refined. And it's clear the United States has put a lot of funding into its military, and that also goes into the research and development of the uniforms. The modern military boot is maybe one of the best I've ever worn. So the jungle boots, I can say fairly definitively, they look cool, they get the job done, but they're not perfect. They would later be replaced by better things, which you'd hope so. And, well, initially when I bought those jungle boots, they were so narrow. So not narrow this way. I mean, I bought longer ones just because I got wide feet, so they're a little long on me. But this way, it was crushing me that way. It was so low, and I've never encountered a boot like that, so I had to get them stretched. But after it was stretched, no worries. Now onto the gloves, the M1949 glove shells. Interesting to note, these gloves were not issued with the fingers exposed. That became a popular trend amongst US soldiers in Korea and Vietnam for the sheer sake of practicality. Not everyone is as talented as Ocelot and able to twirl guns with gloved hands. I've been impressed that some of my viewers have been able to tell that my gloves are not real M1949s. I thought they were practically indistinguishable myself. These were actually the leather motorcycle gloves that I found at an op shop, and I just thought, beauty, these are just so close to accurate. Why would I even need to find real M1949s? Who would know? Who would know, right? Some people knew. Now you know, but let's pretend it didn't happen, okay? Oh, sorry. Op shop is thrift store for the Americans. Opportunity shop, yes. Honestly, I don't care if they're not the real deal. They're so perfect. Look at them. Look at them. Finally, we are getting to one of my favourite parts of the costume, my white whale, the Stabbo harness. The stabilised body extraction harness. I've long wanted to get my hands on one, but they are incredibly rare and incredibly expensive, going for about $1,000 or two, which makes sense because the Stabbo harness had such a limited run. The Stabbo harness soon evolved into the Spy harness, SPIE, Special Patrol Insertion Extraction. The Spy harness was developed in the late 1960s and seemed to enter common use in the 1970s. Snake will adopt this harness by the time of Peace Walk, which is just another great example of the attention to detail in these games. Who would have even noticed that he was still using a Stabbo harness in the 1970s? I believe it is also a Spy harness that we see Venom Snake wearing in the 1980s, noticeable for the horizontal cross-chest strap. This is why genuine Stabbo harnesses are so rare. There are some companies that have sometimes offered replicas in a limited run, although I didn't see anyone offering them at the moment. In the end, I decided to focus all my efforts on finding the parachute clips. I mean, that's really what makes this harness look legit. They are weighty, they look seriously heavy duty, and that's because they are. This is what gives the costume some feeling of authenticity. The rest is just webbing. I found these clips on Army Surplus Warehouse's website, a link in the citations. Reading from SOG by John L. Plaster about the origins of the Stabbo harness here. After several Maguire rig fatalities, First Sergeant Norman Donny added a wrist slip loop, which helped, but some men still fell. Eventually, 3 instructors of the 5th Special Forces Group's Recondo School developed the solution, the Stabbo rig. This book claims that the acronym does not stand for Stabilized Body, but an acronym for their names, Major Robert Stevens, Captain John Knabb, and Sergeant First Class Clifford Roberts. Okay, I'm not seeing it, but alright. Now it says, the Stabbo rig replaced a man's web gear with a special webbed harness. And I'll show you here. To be extracted, the soldier unfastened the 2 straps on his belt, which would normally be there, swung it between the legs. Trying to do that in one swift motion. Look at me go. Actually, can you? If you drop it down. Nearly. Got it. And you would basically loop them through and snap them securely at the front, if I can do that in one continuous motion. Let's see. Alright, yep. Left and left. Right on right. Or can I get it in? Alright, ready to be extracted. When the helicopter dropped a rope with a special Stabbo yoke, he snapped it on 2 rings, 1 at each shoulder, and away he flew. It was ingenious. Not only did the Stabbo rig hold its rider securely, but it left his hands free to use his weapons. My very authentic weapons, yeah. So there we have it, the unusual harness we see betwixt the legs of every snake except Liquid and Solidus, and maybe there's some others I don't know about yet. This appears to be worn in the fashion one would wear it in anticipation of extraction by helicopter. It would otherwise be strapped to the back, as I demonstrated. Kojima seems to have a real fetish for extraction equipment, harnesses, Fulton extraction systems. He bloody loves it. And I gotta say, that does look very cool, although as a woman, going to the toilet, it's like, I gotta take the entire harness off to go pee. Maybe I should get one of those Shiwi little sheath things you put in so I can pee like a man standing. This fits exactly the way it should, and amazingly, yeah, when I move around, it doesn't slip off. I don't feel like I have to keep adjusting it. I like putting my hands there. But yeah, to wear it like this all the time, just yeah. Now I know that information. Like, oh yeah, that doesn't make any practical sense. Why they would always have to have that between their legs. It's the same reason you don't really have jumpsuits, other than flight suits. because most of the time, soldiers, they need to be able to open this area up, either for going to the toilet or for medical reasons. M1956 load carrying equipment. A lot of Snake's equipment is typical of the loadout we see in the Vietnam War as well. And so, show you what I got going on, and that's basically accurate to everything Snake has. I don't think I'm missing anything, although I wish there was a torch. Torches are cool. Quoting from Cartolana.com here, LCE, load carrying equipment, varied according to need, but was typically made up of the M1956 and M1967 components with additional specially procured items. The Stabo extraction harness, shown here, was often worn as the basis of the LCE. Then we move on to the pouches, although I've only got the one. I think he has two. The M1956 small ammunition cases. Each case holds two M14 20-round magazines. Snake chooses to wear both pouches on his left side instead of the standard symmetrical configuration. Some fans speculate that this configuration is a way to allow him to continue to aim down sight while reloading. Does this provide that much of a tactical advantage? I can't say. This is my very, very realistic weapon. So I'm aiming. Hang on, no, because I'm ambidextrous. So right hand, firing my gun. So you guys can see it. Yeah, firing my gun. Okay, and then but can you? Because it's a. I can just. Watch me go. So that does, and then. We need two hands, I think. How do you... that'd be... I'm not saying it's impossible, but I could not do that. Or at least I cannot do that right now. The belt is the M1956 pistol belt, and you've seen this worn by the Boss and Eva as well. It's pretty standard. It's got the 3 eyelets. You can get some with 2, but this is the 3 eyelet variant. The canteen. The 1956 canteen and cover. Snake's canteen was likely plastic, but I've replaced mine with aluminium. I don't want to drink microplastics. The cargo pack. The butt pack. Now, this may be the M1956 or M1961 cargo pack. All the details aren't quite right. I'm not sure why they changed it. The real cargo pack, or butt pack as it's sometimes called, is pretty cool. It even has eyelets on the sides of them to add even more equipment to it. This pack could be worn as a bum bag, as we call it in Australia, or a backpack. My own pack is a source of mystery for my viewers. They can never identify it. There's a good reason for that. It's just a makeup bag from Kmart. My mum was dragging me through the cosmetics aisle. I was bored out of my mind, and well, there you go. That could work. I could use that. And this is back when I was making my very first Snake costume, and I was just like a little kid playing dress up. So I just grabbed whatever looked about right. But as I would soon learn, when it comes to doing military costumes or anything derived from military costumes, the expectation is totally different. And the accuracy is way more important. So yes, one day I will get a real accurate bum bag, and I do want one. It's very cool. It's so expensive, a couple of $100, I think, from memory. Yeah. The holster is a US military M16 leather holster, which dates back to World War II. Quoting from Army and Outdoors, one of my favorite local military surplus stores. The USA got things off to a great start ahead of their contemporaries at the time by adopting the M1911 pistol during the First World War. Heading into the Second World War, the US Army made these holsters to carry them into battle. Although a very basic looking design, it was a solid performer when needing to draw in a hurry and could be mounted wherever the user needed it on their belt securely. Commonly, the holster was mounted to an M1936 pistol belt by using the metal hooks through the eyelets, but it can also be mounted using any type of belt surface with loops at the rear. Another neat feature is the leg strap tied around your thigh to keep the holster firmly in place, which is what that is. I don't think Snake uses that. I know Venom Snake has a strap, but apparently that's for the pockets, not for the belt. And this is my absolute favourite part of the costume. Yeah, I think it might be. It's absolutely beautiful. And I'm a big fan of handcrafted leather. Not much to say about it, just that it gives Snake's costume an element of even older world. World War One and World War Two items are always very expensive at the military swap meets, and that's because they are handcrafted organic materials. Cotton, wool, leather, steel, and they age amazingly. Now onto the pistol. This might just be a child's foam dart gun, but in Australia the gun laws are incredibly strict. I'm not sure if I can even recolor this to be an accurate color, but yeah, I found this one on eBay, and it is based on the Colt, and the shape of it is pretty damn accurate, and even the way you reload it and stuff is pretty realistic. Snake uses the M1911 Colt 45 pistol. It is a single-action, recoil-operated semi-automatic pistol. You've definitely heard of this handgun. It is also known as the Colt Government. So there we have it. We finally know why the novelization keeps referring to it as the Governmento. To me, the Colt 45 has a modern look to it, but it originates in the late 19th century, and it has changed remarkably little in all that time, and has been utilized in every major war of the 20th and 21st centuries. Eva gives you the 45 a couple of hours into the game, but you begin Operation Snake Eater equipped only with the Smith & Wesson MK22, which is no slouch of a weapon either. That particular one was known as the Mod O, or Hush Puppy. It was modified by the Navy. Quoting from the standard catalogue of Smith & Wesson, a 14-shot alloy frame steel slide version with a silencer or suppressor was used in Southeast Asia in the late 1960s. Named for one of its intended uses, silencing enemy guard dogs. It included a slide lock to fire in a single-shot mode, preventing the noise of the operating slide mechanism called the Mark 22 Model O by the Navy. The double-column Model 59 reportedly was developed from this program. Approximately 200 were manufactured. Radio. Now, I don't have a radio. Maybe I will find one day, but ordinarily it would be located somewhere on the belt. I think around there. Quoting from GearIllustration.com, Snake's portable radio hides in the radio pouch all the game, but it does show up in the final cutscene. It's an AN-PRT4 transmitter. There is a problem. AN-PRT4 is just a transmitter. It does not have a receiving function and cannot make any sound. It should be used with an AN-PPR9 receiver. Strangely, they're two separate devices. The receiver is this device you see here, mounted on a helmet. I can see why this is not used in the game. Metal Gear as a series seems to be quite anti-helmet. Snake's mullet must fly free and majestically at all times, and cannot be contained by a helmet. Or maybe he's just such an amazing soldier, he doesn't need one. I'm not sure why they opted to include this radio transmitter when Snake already has the throat mic and switch box here. It may be a redundancy in case his main communication system is damaged or they're connected. These sorts of redundancies are not uncommon in a soldier's gear. The radio is visually appealing too, although I am disappointed Snake never has one of those torches. I love them. They're cool. That's the one bit of Vietnam equipment I wish he had. I think Venom Snake eventually does though. Hope so. The throat microphone. A throat mic, also known as laryngophone, is a kind of microphone. It doesn't operate the same way as the one I'm speaking to now, which picks up the sound waves in the air. Instead, a laryngophone is a kind of contact microphone. These devices are almost completely insensitive to air vibrations, but transduce only structure-borne sound. These are most commonly used to allow communication in noisy environments, like in an aircraft. But why does Snake need one? Well, not only would it make communication easier on a noisy battlefield, but they can also detect whispers, meaning Snake could remain undetected as he talks with Zero and Paramedic or Sigint. These microphones began as bulky headsets, the telephone set headgear used in World War I, as you see here. In World War II, they came to resemble the modern iteration. The radio switchbox, as you can see there. The Vox PTT switchbox is fictional, but thankfully you can buy this 3D pattern from Luke Nakamura, and if he ever does stop selling it, well, just reach out to me. I can hook you up with a copy to 3D print for yourself. The knives. Snake's CQC knife in his chest, as well as its sheath, don't seem to be modelled on any real items. However, the ankle knife is based on the Ontario Aircrew survival knife. The Ontario Knife Company in New York manufactured many survival knives and bayonets for the United States military until the Ontario went defunct in as recently as 2023. The knife in the game isn't a very faithful adaptation. The sheath itself is fairly accurate though, including the tiny outer pocket. I could not find any information on what that pocket was for. Maybe something for sharpening the knife? That's my guess. No idea why Snake has two knives in the game. I guess it's that military redundancy thing. Always have two. Why have one when you can have two of everything? The bandana. The iconic bandana, you may be surprised to learn, was a US standard issue item during the Vietnam War. Quoting from VietnamGear.com. Natick Labs developed the neckerchief during 1966 after the Tropical Combat Uniform Board requested a similar neck scarf to that being used by the Australian forces in Vietnam. It measured 36 by 36 inches and was made from OG 107 absorbent knitted cotton. Later in the war, it was reduced in size to 36 by 24 inches and was dyed OG 109. The neckerchief was used mainly to wipe perspiration and mud from the face, neck, and hands, and was expected to have a lifespan of approximately 6 months. Resourceful soldiers also made their own versions from camouflaged parachute silk. It's gotta be sweaty. Unless it's purely organic silk? I don't know. Interestingly, MACV consultant Crescent H. Kearney believed that the experience of jungle soldiers in World War II showed that using sweat rags robbed the body of its essential natural coolant, tended to spread infection, and generally did more harm than good. So the Americans liked what the Australians were doing and decided to copy our style. This bandana is much bigger than the one worn by Boss or any Snake. However, there are photos of US soldiers in Vietnam, as well as reenactors, who have cut the bandana down to a narrower headscarf, as we see in Metal Gear. The colour seems to vary throughout the games. Sometimes it appears to be khaki or olive, other times it's this blue-grey, and I found this two-tone grey faux suede with this brown backing in an opportunity shop, a thrift shop, an op shop. And it was just a set of cushion covers. So I really like the texture and the dimension of it. And when you sand it back and you weather it, you can see that brown coming through, and I think that creates such a nice cinematic quality to it. It looks more real than real, a simulacrum, if you will. And of course, no bandana would look right without a frown set in right there. And that's just warbler. It's a plate of warbler. It's got 4 strands along here, just to create that front. And I do plan on making some and selling them on my Etsy store eventually. And last but not least, the eye patch. Of course, it is not standard issue. If you have lost an eye or have any kind of disability of that degree, that's an honourable discharge. You are no longer fit to serve, according to, well, the laws of most militaries around the world. Except if it's a private military and you're the boss and you make up the rules. Sort of like myself here, where I didn't straighten my hair, and I think it looks fine with the curls. It's not a huge deal. The curly-haired naked Snake, and also I can't remove my Piercing. I got a lip piercing about 3 months ago, and I tried to get it taken out yesterday, but they wouldn't do it. They said, no, wait 6 months. We cannot pull it out. It might close over. Fine. It's tiny. You can't notice it, but it's not accurate to Snake. It's fine. It's my channel. I make the rules. You probably didn't notice until I pointed it out. I hope I've been able to show you the incredible attention to detail these games demonstrate. Almost all the gear we see on Snake, as well as the other characters, are based on real-world items. They take great care to ensure that these items make sense based on the time period and location. They even go so far as to explain where some of the uncommon pieces came from, like where Eva got her Mouser and Snake's custom Colt 45. So something to keep in mind is that all costumes should have a wow factor to them. For some costumes it's about the size or complexity, for others about the tailoring and the finer details, maybe they're just very colourful, very elaborate. But in the case of military costumes, like Big Boss, they are make or break on authenticity. It would be very difficult to make this costume from scratch. This is a costume that is all about sourcing. And sourcing is an undervalued skill in the cosplay community, I've noticed. But in professional costume design for stage and screen, I can tell you it is a real talent. When you're attempting to recreate history, it goes a long way to source the authentic pieces from that period. Thankfully, military gear is something that is commonly replicated. While I do have some authentic pieces, like the boots, it saves a lot of energy and money being able to find accurate recreations. Big Boss is one of my favorite costumes. It has a presence to it. I feel powerful. I feel badass. I also enjoy that a lot of these pieces are practical and can get use in my daily life. It's comfortable and badass. Like, how rarely do you get a costume that does both? And that is everything that goes into Snake's costume. Over and out.